First of all, I want to thank the organizing committee for inviting me, because I'm not a real researcher, but maybe I'll share with you some ideas that might help all of us to look at the future in the eyes. Second thing, I want to thank Dr. Katz and to bring you to a field of knowledge that I hope most of you are not familiar with it, which is military medicine. War has always been considered a negative phenomenon. As the cardinal thing all wars share has been suffering, wounds, epidemics, crippling, and death. Yet paradoxically, it has been one of the constant traits of human society from time unknown. That was the source of military medicine. At the beginning, an attempt to cure sick soldiers, and later a branch of medicine which has been specialized in preventing disease and saving lives on the battlefield. Contrary to the devastation typical to any war, military medicine has distinguished itself in many occasions by its humane and professional work. The Roman god Janus was the god of beginnings. We remember Janus every year when we begin it with January. It is Janus. As every adventure, including war, begins steadily, but you never can speculate what will be the end, Janus typically had two faces. In this presentation, I would like to speak about the other side and about the other face of war. In the history of war and military medicine, one can find several examples of innovations and discoveries that have changed medicine forever, and most probably wouldn't occur if not at the time of war, wouldn't occur at all, or maybe would occur later. Please do not look at this presentation as a recommendation for waging war. The opposite is right. I bring to you just historical facts that we can learn from them. Already Hippocrates, the founder of Western medicine, said, he who becomes a surgeon would join an army and follow it. Because in the military service, especially at the battlefield, always, unfortunately, doctors gained a lot of experience and were exposed to a place where they had to take difficult decisions. They had to care for the individual soldier as well as for the community, which is a military unit. Ambroise Paré was a French military surgeon who participated in many battles during the 16th century. Until his time, hemorrhage had been stopped by the method of cauterization, means applying very hot iron device to the wound, to the place of bleeding, and cauterizing the vessel. Naturally, this was not a practical method at the battlefield. Paré introduced to medicine a new device. That's Paré on the battlefield. And he introduced into medicine, he invented the ligature. Ligature was a string with which he tied blood vessels, and by this method, limbs, legs and arms could be amputated and life could be saved. That was very interesting. However, it created a new problem. Suddenly, war veterans without a hand or without a leg came home. They had to live, they had to function. And the military surgeon, Ambroise Paré, solved the problem, tried at least, by inventing things that hadn't been in the history of mankind, means rehabilitation. Paré discovered or invented the prosthesis. Here are legs, here is a hand. It is not only a hand, you can see that he tried to make a functional artificial organ. 16th century, and this is a hand, a palm. Of course, these things are primitive, but we are talking about a new paradigm, a new paradigm in medicine, rehabilitation. It means not to cry about what had been lost, but to use efficiently what remained and to achieve, as far as possible, normal life. That's a revolution in medicine. Dominique Jean Larrey, the Surgeon General of the Napoleonic War, maybe is considered the most important military surgeon of all times. He had a very interesting and bold medical surgical innovations. But Larrey did something very interesting. He introduced to the battlefield the ambulance volante, the flying ambulance, a medical surgical unit which enters the battlefield in the middle of the fire and tries to treat soldiers, wounded soldiers, as fast, as close as possible, and to evacuate them to real hospitals. You think it is very nice to treat people as soon as possible, but it's a new paradigm again. Larrey introduced time as an independent factor into medicine, things that hadn't been known. He saw that wounded people who were attained very early had better chances to survive. That's very important, of course. Now, what does it mean to introduce time into medicine? Larrey is the father, the prophet of intensive care units, about fighting against time in deteriorating hemodynamic situation, against sepsis, again, not reaching the point where death is imminent and it is irreversible anymore. Until the 20th century, more soldiers were dying on the various fronts from diseases. More soldiers died from diseases than from enemy's fire. The main enemy of any army, especially during the European expansion, was malaria. No wonder then that the solution for malaria was found by army medical officers. It was Alphonse Laveran, a French medical officer who served in Algeria, who discovered the malaria parasite, the Plasmodium. The second one was British Ronald Ross, who served in the military in India and discovered the malaria parasite cycle and the task or the importance of the Anopheles mosquito. This allowed to form a battle against malaria, preventing the disease and treating the victims of the disease. During the First World War, the Germans and later the British used chemical substances as a weapon for mass destruction. One of them was mustard gas. Victims of mustard gas suffered from burns in the skin as well as in the ventilatory systems and the lung. Thousands died and suffered and became crippled. Thorough research that included post-mortems of many victims of mustard gas discovered an unexpected finding. In most of the victims of mustard gas, significant diminishing or even total disappearance of the lymph nodes was noticed. This observation led researchers to the thought that mustard gas had an effect on the lymphatic and immune system. This speculation led later to the development of a derivative of mustard gas, nitrogen mustard, a chemotherapeutic agent efficient in the treatment of hematological malignancies, mainly malignant lymphoma. In the Spanish Civil War, during the 30s of the 20th century, the leading orthopedic surgeon of the Republican Army, Joseph Trueta y Raspal, managed to develop a new attitude towards complicated fractures. Trueta practiced excision of the damaged tissues of the wound and immediate encasement of the affected limb in plaster of Paris. Trueta's practice influenced to a great extent the process of healing and also diminished the occurrence of infections among casualties. During the Second World War, the Germans formed the Blitz over London, where many houses were destroyed, burying under them their inhabitants. When hours or even days later the victims were extricated from under the rubble, most of them were dead. However, some whose vital organs had not been crushed under the rubble managed to survive but died later due to acute renal failure. The reason for that phenomenon was a mystery at the time. A young scientist, Eric Bywaters, was recruited by the military to try and to solve the problem. He found that crushing of the muscles released into the bloodstream various muscular tissues constituent mainly myoglobin and potassium. While the myoglobin obliterated the glomeruli, it caused deterioration of the renal function and further allowed the potassium in the blood to rise into toxic and lethal levels. The understanding Here's the original discovery of bywaters, March 41, BMJ. The understanding of the mechanism of what would later be called traumatic rhabdomyolysis or the crush syndrome allowed the development of methods to cope with this imminent life-threatening situation. We in Israel had one of these terrible accidents during the war in Lebanon in 1982, where a 7-story house collapsed on more than 120 people that were inside, and every victim that was extricated alive from under the rubble was saved by simple methods based on simple physiology, monitoring the pH, monitoring the volume of fluids, and all this being done at the battlefield near the site of the disaster, which is very important for earthquakes and other things in the civilian scenario. The next chapter is an international chapter. Though Alexander Fleming and his associate, Florian Chain, speculated about Penicillium ridicula already during the 30s, penicillin could be manufactured only during the Second World War, because the materialization of production of penicillin demanded the cooperation of governments, private companies, and brilliant scientists. And this actually got a booster because of the war. During many military conflicts, documented already in antiquity, soldiers have died due to heat stroke and exhaustion. However, no real step was taken against this pathologic situation due to logistic consideration, commanders' arrogance, and mainly misunderstanding of water metabolism. It was Colonel Ezra Zohar, MD, from the Israeli Army Medical Corps, who initiated a physiological experiment in order to solve this problem. In 1959, he followed infantry soldiers who marched for 500 kilometers, and during this voyage, their water metabolism was monitored thoroughly. The conclusion was unequivocal. Water restriction was the main reason for heat stroke and death among the soldiers. Since then, water restriction was abandoned, and the result, heat stroke, almost disappeared from the military scenario. So here, I reached the end of the short list of great medical achievements in this military scenario. Yet I cannot finish my presentation without quoting one of the great military surgeons, Sir Zachary Cope, during the Second World War. It's so simple. So we may hope that future generations may profit by the terrible experience of the present time, and there may develop the perfect prophylaxis of the war disease, peace. And, more concise is and better, what says the prophet, Isaiah, nation shall not lift up sword against nation, neither shall they learn war anymore. Thank you very much.